The Boston Celtics are still on a roll as we await Jayson Tatum's potential return. Hello and welcome to Boston Balling, your home for all things Boston sports. I'm your host, Gabby Maljanian, currently the host of this show, as well as the Locked On Red Sox podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. So if you want daily Red Sox talk, make sure you subscribe to that other show as well to hear me break down all things going on with that team as we get into spring training time. But Boston Balling is your home for all things discussing all of the other Boston teams. And while the season may not have ended the way that we wanted it to for the Patriots, there's still lots to be proud of there. Making it to the Super Bowl in a season where literally nobody thought that they would, that's all a huge accomplishment. So I talked about it on yesterday's show. Patriots had a season that there's plenty to be proud of going into the offseason here, hoping to make the most of it. But today is Tuesday, so today means we talk all things Celtics. And the reason I brought up the Patriots is, well, they had a disappointing ending because they didn't end up winning the Super Bowl. We have the Boston Celtics to look forward to now, who have been a very exciting team to date in the 2025-2026 season. And there's still quite a bit of time left. And they still aren't at full strength because they still don't have Jayson Tatum. So where do the Celtics go from here? Because this is a team that has very much been able to establish chemistry this season, and they were really making it work with the players they had. Joe Mazzulla deserves a lot of credit for the way that he's coached this team this year, being able to really nail the rotations that he's put together, really being able to maximize the talent that he has on this roster. And then the trade deadline came along. The Celtics switched things up a bit. They traded some guys. They brought in Nikola Vucevic, and he's definitely been a solid addition. Has some weaknesses that show, but also has some strengths that show. So the big pending question now moving forward is Jayson Tatum going to come back this season or not? Because that's a big question going around Celtics Nation right now, because what's really exciting to think about is how well the Celtics have played without him. Now, they do have the All-Star break coming up here, so that's something to keep in mind as we continue to progress through the rest of the week. They have one more game tomorrow night, and then they're off for a week for the All-Star break. And they are currently tied with the Knicks right now with a 34-19 record. Technically, the Knicks are in the 2 spot and the Celtics are in the 3 spot because it comes down to your conference record. And while the Celtics are 23-13 in conference right now, the Knicks are 23-12. So literally just a half game difference right now between these two teams. The Knicks unfortunately beat the Celtics over the weekend. So those two teams are neck and neck. And what's exciting about that is that, again, because the Celtics don't have a fully healthy Jayson Tatum, you can't help but feel excited about what things could be with him. And we got a big update on Jayson Tatum the other day. He was cleared to practice with the Maine Celtics. So yesterday, Monday, he suited up for practice with the team's G League affiliate. He has been sidelined since tearing his right Achilles during the second round of last year's playoffs. And he talked about the practice and said that it was part of his rehab process. He said it's been a long journey. This was when he was talking about it Tuesday afternoon at the Celtics facility after the practice. So earlier today, he was talking about this. So after that one practice was over, he was recalled to the Celtics. So he will continue his rehab with the Boston team now. So he only spent the one practice in Maine, but that's significant because him being cleared to practice is a huge step towards him being able to return sooner rather than later, because he's now able to be back on his feet, moving, nothing too crazy, but at least is able to practice. So that's leading more towards a potential return. So he said it's been a long journey and it's just like the progression of rehab. It was the next step. Doesn't mean that I'm coming back or not. It's just following the plan. So it's just another step. He was recently cleared for 5-on-5 work and then was assigned to Maine on Monday to participate in parts of the team's practice. And Hugo Gonzalez and Amari Williams, two Boston Celtics players, were also assigned to the G League for that session. So Tatum did say that his body responded well to the practice. He said it was good. It was just kind of good to be out there, had a jersey on, just kind of felt good to be a part of a team in practice and go through reps and stuff like that. And Joe Mazzulla, Celtics head coach, also felt like Tatum looked good during the practice. He said he's continuing to just chip away at the progression of his rehab, and it was great to see him take another step. There's been a lot of steps and milestones along the way, starting from just walking, and it was great to see him get to the next one. President of Basketball Operations, Brad Stevens, also weighed in on this because this is such a big topic right now and said Tatum has checked a lot of boxes in his recovery, but still has a ways to go before considering a potential return. And Tatum said that the next steps in his rehab will involve just more conditioning, more live things, getting acclimated to playing 5-on-5 in contact and stuff like that. He also did say that his injury rehab has been mentally challenging, which is completely normal. I mean, who wouldn't find that challenging to have to go through that rigorous injury rehab process and be missing being on the court with your teammates, not knowing if you're going to have a setback, not knowing how smoothly the whole process is going to go for you. So I would imagine he probably does get in his head a little bit about that. He said, it's been exhausting. I can't stress it enough. It's been 39 weeks. It's been a lot of different phases throughout this process, but the organization has been there to support me, friends, family, the whole nine. I've had a lot of support throughout this. And that's definitely huge. You definitely need to lean on the people close to you when you're going through something like that. And we know Jayson Tatum, he's hungry. He just wants to be out there. And that's, I think, what made this injury more heartbreaking even to witness when it happened at the time, because you just knew, wow, as much as this hurt us to see, it hurts him significantly more because he wants nothing more than to be out there with his team. So it's definitely a matter of feeling empathy for the guy and feeling like, wow, this is really difficult that he's had to be watching from the sidelines instead of being able to be out there. Despite Tatum's absence, the Celtics have obviously been holding down the fort, and that was something that made Jayson Tatum happy, is being able to see Jaylen Brown and his teammates succeed. He said, even before the season, there was no doubt in my mind that he and Derrick White and all these guys, I knew what they were capable of. Whenever somebody that loves the game that much and works as hard as they do, with maybe more opportunity, I'm not surprised what they've been able to accomplish. It's been really fun and cool to see and watch. And when he said he and Derrick White, he was referring to Jaylen Brown. So as much as he wants to be out there, he obviously has been so happy seeing them succeed and still be able to hold down the fort. From a team camaraderie standpoint, that's got to be huge to say, wow, we're playing really well. And what better way to really top this off by bringing back Jayson Tatum to help us with a potential playoff push. So despite seeing all of that success from the team, Tatum has definitely been in some vulnerable moments during all of this. He did express concerns recently, which I talked about last week, about rejoining a team that has gelled without him. And in his press conference today, he said that Boston's formula might look different if he does return this season. He said, I haven't played with these guys or with this group, but a lot of high IQ guys out there. I like to consider myself one of those types of players. So if that did present itself and if I did come back, we professionals will figure it out. So my impression with all of that is that he's definitely still a little bit worried about it and a little bit hesitant. And I do think a lot of that is internal. I think he's overanalyzing the situation, doesn't want to put too much pressure on himself if he does come back, because he knows that if he comes back, people are going to have really high expectation for him to perform at the highest level. And mentally, that might be a challenge for him right now. But on the same token, he also doesn't know if him going back would throw off the team chemistry, and he doesn't want to be the reason that it impacts them negatively. So I do feel like as hungry as he is to be out there with his team, I could totally see him second guessing all of that because he doesn't want to be the one who people look at and say, wow, this is because of him and it's throwing off their chemistry that now they're in jeopardy of missing the playoffs or now they just aren't nearly as dominant as they were. So he doesn't really want that to happen. And that's part of why he's being so hesitant. He also said he has had a lot of time on his hands while rehabbing from his injury. He said, you think about a lot of things and you're just hyper aware of what's going on. And I think it would just stem from that. Obviously, I know what I bring to the table and bring to the team, but I'm also aware that these guys have been playing extremely well. And not to say that I would come and mess it up or anything like that. It was just kind of being vulnerable, I guess, for a moment and talking from that perspective. So again, totally normal for him to have conflicting feelings on it because he wants them to obviously continue to succeed, but he wants to go out there with them and he doesn't want to be an inconvenience to them or throw them off too much by having to get everybody to re-gel and get reacclimated with a lineup that includes Tatum in it. The prospect of adding him to one of the best teams in the East should be really exciting for the Celtics and the fan base. And Tatum did say that he's really excited about the trade deadline acquisition of Nikola Vucevic, whom he called a hell of a player. So he's really excited about that. So lots of promising signs signaling towards Tatum potentially coming back. He seems to be in really good spirits. He seems to have a good head on his shoulders about the whole thing. And you can see when he's at these games and he's on the sidelines sitting there cheering for his team that he does have a smile on his face most of the time. And even if internally he's struggling because he doesn't necessarily want to be that player who looks disappointed because he can't play. He wants to be the guy who's still showing support for his team and showing up every day and being there to push them 100%. And that's exactly what he's been doing, even as a cheerleader on the sideline. So having Tatum there, even just his presence alone, is definitely helping to push his team to continue to play its best every game. At this point right now, he just definitively isn't ready to commit to playing at all this season. He said he's taking the process day by day, and Brad Stevens has said that the Celtics only want him to suit up again once he is fully ready, both physically and mentally. And that's a key thing here because the medical staff for the team could clear him to play physically and his body may be ready to go, but he also mentally and emotionally needs to be ready to take that jump back in because it's hard when you miss the majority of the season and your team is playing at such a high level to then come back into the fold. So if he mentally isn't ready for it, the Celtics don't want him to come back. He said, I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm still just going through the progressions of rehab. I'm not saying I'm coming back or not. It's all about being 100% healthy and going through the plan of this protocol. So there are multiple ways to take this because on one hand, he doesn't want to overpromise. He doesn't want to say, yeah, I'm definitely coming back in a month because then what happens if he has a setback? Then people are going to be in an uproar because he didn't come back and that would look worse for him because then people would be mad. So there's that perspective of it. There's the other perspective of, oh, is he scared to come back into the fold because he can't handle the potential pressure that's going to be placed on him when he does come back? So therefore, rather than dealing with it, he's just going to run away with it altogether. So that's a factor to think about in all of this as well. So those two things. And then number 3 would be, even if he's not scared to come back, but he's a little bit hesitant about the chemistry that the team has already established, part of this could definitely be that, oh, maybe he sees a pathway for this team to go all the way without him. So why rush himself back if he feels like this team can hold its own through a championship run? Because obviously we as fans watch the games, but we don't know the behind the scenes and we don't know what goes into their practices and all of their training. And if Tatum sees this team as a special group that even without him could win a championship this season, I could get the perspective of maybe being like, okay, I'll continue to take the rest of the season off and then just be ready in full force to go at the beginning of next year. So that way, then when it's the beginning of the season and everybody's establishing chemistry anyway, then I'm in the fold as opposed to expecting them to reacclimate themselves down the stretch. That could also be taken negatively too, though, however, because it could be taken negatively if he chooses not to come back and then this team doesn't make a deep playoff run, because then somebody could argue that he's being a bad teammate because he decided not to come back when it was clear that the team needs him to make a deep playoff push. And if they don't, then all eyes will be on him like, wow, dude, you really didn't make a decision that was in your team's best interest. You made a decision because you were hesitant about coming back and it cost this team, even though you were medically and physically cleared to go. So there's lots of layers to this and lots of different ways that you can take it. Tatum definitely doesn't mean this maliciously, and I truly don't believe it's a lack of confidence and not feeling like he'd be able to step seamlessly back into the fold. I truly think he's trying to think of everybody else and doesn't want to be that guy who comes back into the fold and throws off what they already have going, because that could come across like, wow, he's making this about him and the team was established as is, but now they have to cater to Jayson Tatum. So there's not really going to be a full 100% way for him to win regardless. It's just a matter of how he decides to go about it. But I know every Celtics fan would be so excited if he comes back down the stretch, because how could you not be? This is a team with a solid group, and he definitely is one of those key pieces as long as he stays healthy for this team. So I'm definitely really excited about the possibility of him coming back into the fold and being somebody who can contribute at a really high level. So we'll have to see ultimately how that plays out. But to me, the Celtics got a guy in Nikola Vucevic at the trade deadline who definitely will be and should be a big help down the stretch here. And coming up, I'm going to be discussing what I've noticed about him so far since coming to Boston and what to look out for moving forward. But just a quick reminder to subscribe to Boston Balling on any podcast platform, because I am here Monday through Thursday discussing the latest in all things Boston sports. So if you want to be part of that action, make sure that you subscribe, follow wherever you get your podcasts, you name it. I'll be bringing some fun guests on along the way, media personnel, coaches, athletes, etc., you name it. So you won't want to miss any of that. So make sure you continue to subscribe. Also follow me on social media at Gabby Maljanian on Twitter, at Gabby_Maljanian10 on Instagram. You can also follow Boston Balling on Twitter at Boston Balling, and Locked On Red Sox on Twitter at LO_Red Sox. So I know I just rattled off a bunch of social media platforms, but you get the gist. Follow me, subscribe, listen to my 2 shows, and we'll have some fun talking Boston sports. And speaking of fun, the Boston Celtics have had a fun season so far. And going into this year, I didn't think they would be among the worst teams in the Eastern Conference. I was like, well, they're still a talented team, even without Jayson Tatum. I mean, this is still a team that probably is capable of sneaking into the playoffs, even if they're the 9 or 10 seed and they sneak into the play-in. Never did I think that they would be at the point they're at right now heading into the All-Star break. I just truly did not think that they would be in this good of a spot that they're in right now, but they truly have surpassed expectations, and I'm so proud to be able to watch this team every day because they have just been so fun. And when we went into the trade deadline, there were a lot of questions surrounding the Celtics and how they were going to utilize that trade deadline and the types of moves that they were going to make. And one of the moves that was notable was the only addition they made to the team, which was Nikola Vucevic, because they did make other small trades. They traded away guys like Josh Minott and Chris Boucher, but those were minor trades. They acquired Nikola Vucevic and traded away Anthony Simons in the deal. And it was clear that the Celtics needed a big man at the trade deadline. That was the blatant need for this team, and that's exactly what Brad Stevens went out and got, a big man who could play center consistently and could be a good stretch five option to contradict the Celtics small ball tactic that they have been using a lot of this season, and that's exactly what Vucevic comes in and does. He's a veteran presence, and while I said Luka Garza and Neemias Queta both have stepped into their roles very well for this Celtics team this year, but having that other option who could play that position a little bit more regularly and consistently and with reliability is huge. And I'm not saying Garza and Queta aren't reliable. It's just you don't know how reliable they would be in a playoff atmosphere. And also, if somebody gets hurt, it's definitely better to have another option. And he kind of forces them to play a different style a little bit more. But I really like what I'm seeing from him so far. A lot of people are nagging on him, but keep in mind, for one, that it takes a player time to adjust when they first join a team for the first time. I mean, he just got traded to the Celtics team. And like I mentioned on this show before, basketball is a huge chemistry-based sport. And because of the fact that the Celtics had such strong on-court chemistry that Anthony Simons was a part of, it takes time to reacclimate yourselves and create chemistry in a different way when you trade a key player and bring in a key player from a different capacity. And in this specific case, with the Celtics bringing in Vucevic, the Celtics are kind of forced to have a different style that they have to play based on what works and what doesn't with this new group of players. So there's a lot of layers to it. Joe Mazzulla needs to figure out what rotations now make the most sense with him being added. The play style changes a little bit. People's roles change a little bit. So when a player first comes to a new team, it's normal for there to be some growing pains, and it's normal for them to have to acclimate a little bit. And that's, I think, what we're seeing a lot of from Vucevic here, is getting used to playing in Boston. His teammates getting used to playing with him, because again, you get so used to playing with the guys you're playing with. So then if somebody new comes in, you have to get used to that. So on both sides there, between the team and him, there's some acclimating involved that does need to happen. And I do think we're still in that phase now. But overall, what Vucevic provides and brings to the table is something that is certainly going to hopefully be beneficial for the Celtics moving on for the rest of the season and hopefully making a deeper playoff run. And the returns so far in general on him have been mixed. He definitely has helped boost the Celtics rebounding for sure. He is killing it on those boards down low. That's something I really like about him. And he's definitely shown flashes of being a good passer who's able to add new dimensions into the Celtics offense, as well as his shot from beyond the arc gives the team the option to run 5-out lineups. So again, it allows them to play that stretch five, and he gives them that option. So I really like that about him too. So that being said, while he does have those as strengths, the knocks against his defense are very much legitimate, because he's clearly a bit slow when it comes to foot speed or closing out on opponents, squaring up for a shot from 3-point range. And that's definitely something we knew going into this trade. We knew once the Celtics got him that his defense wasn't the best part of his game, to put it that way. We knew that that was a weakness of him, and that's not why Brad Stevens traded for him, was to play defense. He traded for him to give them that stretch five option, like I said, to allow for a little bit of a different playing style and to get a big man presence in there who's reliable, can be a good rebounder and good shooter. And I truly do think that if we give him time, he's only going to get better, and his presence on this Celtics team is going to make a lot more sense. Because in the game against the Knicks, and there was a game against the Heat last week too, in which the Celtics ended up actually coming back in dramatic fashion and winning that game by 2, which was crazy because they were down by a lot. They were down by double digits for a lot of that game, and they ended up coming back. So in those types of games, where shots weren't falling very easily. I saw a lot of people complaining on Twitter, where's Anthony Simons? Would have been nice to use him off the bench in a game like this. And while literally you can say, well, yeah, it would be nice to still have him here off the bench. If you think about it, imagine if Jayson Tatum was here. And you take a look at what Payton Pritchard has been doing. All of a sudden, you're looking at a situation where that shooting is covered because you have your guys. Now, granted, obviously, if Tatum doesn't end up coming back this year, then that'll feel more missed than it would if he comes back. But that's something that's out of our control. But Payton Pritchard for a lot of the season was starting, and now the Celtics have been having him come off the bench, and he's been absolutely excelling again in that role. And it feels like that's where he belongs. It feels like he belongs as that sixth man coming off the bench, and I've enjoyed seeing him be that option for the Celtics as of late. And I do think that's all a preface to Jayson Tatum potentially returning, because if he comes back and he's starting, then you're looking at Payton Pritchard, who's been on fire this year, as that sixth man. So then all of a sudden, that shooting ability that Anthony Simons provided off the bench, that spark, you feel like you're getting that out of Payton Pritchard. Again, if Tatum doesn't come back, then people are probably going to be like, well, we should still have Simons. But the reality is, at the end of the day, you need to give to get in this league. And because the Celtics needed a big, it made sense to make this move at the time. I mean, expiring contracts for both. So it's not like they gave up a non-expiring contract for an expiring one, because of the fact that Anthony Simons is also on an expiring contract. So that was a reason why it made sense to make this move. But for two, if you want to make your team better and elevate the team, that's what you have to do. And while they had Anthony Simons, would they have gotten exposed in the playoffs if they didn't have that very necessary big? Probably. So that's why these hard decisions have to be made. But that's why I'm not overly concerned about the shooting thing, because I do think that once Vucevic gets acclimated fully to being in Boston, it's going to make a lot of sense why the Celtics traded for him. And I do think they'll be better off in that regard than they would be if they still had Simons, because it's a better allocation of resources. At the end of the day, that's what it's about, making sure you're better allocating resources to make sure that you're maximizing the roster that you have. And what Anthony Simons was providing isn't something that they can't find somebody else to do, or they don't already maybe have internal options. So these are all things to think about when you're watching the Celtics team moving forward, is that, yes, if they're having trouble shooting, it would be nice to be able to say, let's bring in Anthony Simons off the bench. I definitely agree with that. But if you look at the overall picture of where they're at right now, this is the move that made the most sense. And I definitely am a little bit concerned about Vucevic's defense, but I can't say it's anything that I'm surprised about. We knew that this was an issue coming in. So considering the fact that I knew that, and that knowing that's his weakest aspect of his game, I do really like the other assets of his game that he has brought so far in these first few games here that he's played in a Boston Celtics uniform. And he looks so natural out there in a Celtics uniform too. I mean, it just looks like it's meant to be. He's talked about since the trade how excited he is to be in Boston. He actually did mention that he always enjoyed playing at TD Garden as a visiting player, because he always felt like the atmosphere and the environment was so electric there, and he just kind of felt like there wasn't any other place like Boston. So he actually has expressed how excited he is about the idea of playing in Boston, and that's what we love to hear. You want guys who are passionate and excited to be here, and because he's a veteran and he's kind of been around and he has experience playing in different arenas, it's a good sign for him being able to take the pressure that comes with playing in a place like Boston, because like multiple people have mentioned to me before, athletes, etc., Boston is not for everybody. You have to have mental and physical toughness to be able to succeed in a place like Boston. And it feels like he does have that. He's very aware of how passionate the fan base is. And I love that. So he just looks so natural out there. So the biggest key for the Celtics moving forward is going to be to continue to make sure that that chemistry is in check for the rest of the season moving forward and acclimating him into it to make sure that it makes sense to continue to input the strategy that Joe Mazzulla wants to implement and make sure that he's fully on board with everything and that everybody on this team is fully on board with everything. So I'm excited to see how that all plays out. And I'm also really excited to see how guys like Derrick White step up down the stretch, because Derrick White is a big second half guy. We love the Derrick White who just goes off and explodes in the second half, is hitting all of his shots and is basically taking over the game. We love that version of D White. So I'm really excited to see where things go from here for him, and excited to see how this team really starts to step it up as we get into these crunch time games when it comes to fighting for seeding in the Eastern Conference. Are the conversations with Jayson Tatum about him coming back going to amp back up? Are we going to see more from some of these guys off the bench, maybe with Joe Mazzulla trying to play around with who could be reliable in the postseason for them? What does he have to work with in terms of his rotations? Who's even going to come in off the bench for a completely secondary rotation? Lots to figure out still in these next couple months, but it will go by fast, and especially with the All-Star break this upcoming weekend and them not playing for a week, it's going to be interesting to see how they come back after that, because it's always difficult during the All-Star break when teams haven't played in a week because they're so used to playing every other day consistently, sometimes with back-to-backs mixed in. But during the season, the only time they have that long of a break is for the All-Star break. So sometimes teams come back from the break and they're a little bit rusty, and then they don't perform at the level that you expect them to at first. So I will be interested in seeing how the Celtics come back from this break and how they are able to still continue to dominate at the level that they've been dominating at in the Eastern Conference, and hopefully taking them all the way to the finals, and that they're able to continue to play their version of basketball, because their version of basketball has worked out very well in 2025 and 2026. So thank you so much for continuing to tune in. We'll have to see what happens with the Celtics and Jayson Tatum and all that, but appreciate you tuning in Monday through Thursday, continuing to subscribe, follow, like, you name it. Be sure to tune in so you don't miss some cool guests along the way. Thanks so much as always. Go Celtics, and I'll catch you next time.